is That Life. I'm Amber Buto, and today I have two amazing co-hosts and a guest today. It's a little different than what we do, but so welcome as our co-host today,
Laura Gallier.
And thank you for coming and being on our show, Meg Thomson. Okay, Meg. Let's start with Meg. Meg, you are the producer of multiple films, but a new film coming to market in December. We're going to get to that. But before we get to all of that, let's go back a little bit. You know, this show is a lot about inspiring stories of the entertainment industry, how and why people got into the industry and what that journeys look like. So have you always produced? Or have you done other roles, and what did that look like getting into the entertainment industry?
First of all, thank you for having me here. It's really great to meet you and to meet you yesterday. But yes, so I've always been a producer, but I have dipped in and out of it. When I got out of college, I got a job as an assistant to a big producer, and that was my entry in. And what was great about him was that he very early on said, okay, I want you to learn all about the different aspects of production. So I hadn't gone to film school. I was always interested in film, but I didn't have any experience working on the set. So he had me work for the first month in the camera department, the second month in the art department, the third month in the costume department. And so I very quickly got to see how each department was structured, how they worked internally. And in fact, my first time in Houston, I know this goes everywhere, but the first time I came to Houston I was with the costume designer on a film, and I came to Houston and saw the way she researched costume design. It was just so interesting to see how that all worked. Yeah. So I very quickly did a lot of sort of big budgeted studio films with him. Mm-hmm. But then worked on one independent movie. And that independent movie really inspired me because it was like suddenly all the cast members were doing it for next to nothing, and everybody was rolling up their sleeves. And it was just such a different experience than working on studio movies, because studio movies had just too much money to play with. And this was just a way of getting really into it and doing it for the love of the story, you know? Yeah. So that was in New York in the 90s, and I moved to London in 1998, and I had a production company there for 10 years. And I then got out of it for a while. And so I also work right now at a company called Global Gate Entertainment. We are affiliated with Lionsgate. We make movies not in English. So that's what I've been doing for the last 7 or 8 years, is making French comedies and Korean thrillers and Filipino dramas. So that's what what I do.
Yeah, that's so great. One of the beginning episodes we had on here was my foreign exchange student. Okay. From South Korea. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. And he was 15 when he came here. And left at, I think, 16 or 17. And he got into the film business and has worked on a major film in Korea that just came out. He has produced a short that just recently won the Paris Film Festival, and they're flying him out and screening his thing. Just so fabulous. It was so great what he's done and all of that. And then who knew Korean TV was so huge?
I know.
But
it's amazing. And the Korean movies are amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, I go to Korea a lot, and I work with a lot of Korean production companies. So it's very exciting.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I should meet him when I next go.
Yes, you should. That's a great thing. We'll make that happen. Yeah. Okay, so you currently live in London.
I do live in London.
You moved back.
I moved back, yes.
And started back on the foreign sales side, or foreign content, really.
Yep.
Sort of things.
Yeah. I mean, the way I got into that was I was in London for a long time. I moved to LA briefly. And when I moved to LA, this was in 2008, I saw that everybody in LA is a producer. And I was like, okay, what's my USP here? I'm just another producer now. And it was those European contacts that really were very interesting. And so I thought, well, all of them are doing remakes. Why don't I talk to all the European producers I know about their remake rights? And I can bring remakes to Hollywood, and they can remake these European movies. And so I did that and set some of them up. But what I found was that the Indians, the Koreans, and the Chinese all wanted to buy the remakes. So suddenly I was taking European movies and remaking them in Asia. And so it became this real interesting thing. So I had a remakes company where I was basically selling remake rights to everybody. Neat. And and then that transitioned. I transitioned out of that company to this bigger organization, Global Gate, which is essentially, it's not a remake company, but it's the exchange of IP. So often what we'll do is we'll take a Mexican comedy and we'll make it in France, or we'll take a Korean drama and we'll make it in. So it's that sort of thing. So it's not all remakes, but that is our entry into these foreign language films.
Okay, so what is that experience like, making a film not speaking the language?
Well, first of all, I can't believe that I don't speak. I should speak a lot of languages, and it's just embarrassing that I don't. I just have a mental block. Right. But what you realize is actually, I mean, movies are so reflective of our culture, of our beliefs, of our taste, of our, design, all of these things. And so the more movies you watch, whether they be, English or Korean or whatever, the more you know about that culture. So from just a lot of years of doing this, and it's interesting because I'm not doing like art house films. I'm doing the commercial movies in these territories, which don't always make it to the U.S., but they do really well in their own territories. So through watching all those, you start to understand, the Danish and the Italians have similar comic taste. Yeah, and I only know that not because I understand their jokes, but because I can read and see their, see how they're done. So it's a lot of travel, but it's been, really interesting to get to know cultures through their movies, through what they create.
That like just gets my wheels just spinning. That's amazing. I love traveling to another culture to learn about that culture.
Of course.
Right. You try to always find some way to submerge yourself into like their daily life. What does that look like? How do they think? How do they do? And, Americans, like, we drive days and we're still in America.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're not real cultured. Americans,
well, some are, but
that cultured,
right?
Comparatively to if you grew up in, let's say, Germany or somewhere else, you drive a couple hours and you're in another country, another way, it's in a system, all of that. I think we don't. So the first time I went to Europe, I was like, whoa, and they do things different. How they raise their children are different. The culture of their family is different, and it works. And it's great. And it's so like, I feel like sometimes here in America, we're really narrow-minded on like, oh no, we have to do it this way. And I'm like, but we don't. Like over there, they do it this way and their families are thriving, are great. And do all kinds of things. I think there's more than one way. So.
Exactly. But I do think that, I feel like lately all over the world, everybody's looking inward a lot more. And I think that even though you can drive from Germany to France quite easily, they don't always do that. And that's where I think that all countries suddenly, it seems like, are really looking at their own way of doing things, which I don't know if it's a good thing, but I think that's partially caused by globalization and the fact that, everything seems so close now. But what makes it interesting about, foreign language movies is like actually, a French person wants to go see a French movie and a Mexican wants to go see a Mexican movie because they have the same cultural references and things like that. And so that's kind of awesome that, that people are, because if we all became the same, then that wouldn't be interesting, So
for sure.
So it's okay. But it's funny because we obviously as Americans have such, our movies are seen all over the world. And so there's a sort of sense that everybody knows what America is, when actually like our movies don't necessarily reflect who we are. We're so diverse too, And so it's like, just because you've seen a lot of American movies doesn't mean you know what it's like here, So
the stereotypical things, like in Texas, everybody thinks that we walk around with boots and hats on. You know what I mean?
Wearing a pair, but I drove here. I did not ride a horse, so there is a false impression of that. And as I'm listening to you now, I'm thinking about how there are, I'm sure, viewers out there, listeners, who have disqualified themselves for one reason or another. And here you didn't have the education in TV and film, but you still got the experience. You're a woman, and a time when a lot of producers, especially when you were starting out, were male. You don't speak the language. As I'm listening to you, it just seems like you embrace opportunity without disqualifying yourself. Is there anything you would say to those who are watching and maybe they're becoming aware even now, like, wow, I've disqualified myself because of this or that? What would you say to that?
That's a really good point. I think that's, I think that is actually what is great about Americans, and weirdly, and Spaniards and Koreans, I think too. But but the ability that you can do anything, that don't say no. Like, okay, you want it there? How far? Like, and that kind of thing. I do think that, there's a sort of getting to yes that is very important, and just saying, okay, well, if there are hurdles, how do I clear them? And and not thinking no, because I do think that often there are a lot of people who will tell you no, and it's just I think just sort of saying, okay, well, if I don't have that, what do I need to get there? And I'd like to think that I don't that anything is possible, you know, and that's what I feel like also with like anything creative or anything. It's like, as long as you keep that, like, everything's possible. Okay, just how do we get there? Everything's possible. Then things get done.
Right. And I'm sure you've worked extremely hard, and that perseverance has been there. You didn't just wake up with all these, open doors, but it sounds like you didn't take closed doors as an absolute no. You just persevered and learned, and I admire that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, they say in the industry, you're like a firefighter. You're always looking to put out the fire.
Yes.
You're an ultimate problem solver, because there's just problems popping up right and left, and you're just trying to. That's how. There's never the possibility in like my mind that it's not going to happen. It's just, how are we going to arrive at
get there?
Happening? You know what I mean? It's just like, if they say, oh, we can't get that, like now, or like 5 minutes from now, 2 hours from now, like what is we can't get that right now? Like, because we're going to dissect that, and we're going to get it in one way or another. Like, what do I need to move around to so that it works, that I'm going to get it? Because it has to happen.
Exactly.
And I don't think that that mentality as frequent. I think that's a special mentality to have that. Yeah. And it's a special person to sit in specific roles in the movie industry. Right. Right. And that's part of our MO around here, of having interns and different people come through, and like, where do you fit? Do you have that tenacity? Is that your approach to life? What is your approach in this industry and stuff like that? But for a producer, 1,000,000%. It has to. Sorry. No, yeah, it's good. You have to have that. And so that's really great that you've crossed and transcended different languages and cultures and all of that with it, and everything. So crossing all the cultures, being a producer, working so hard to realize films, I think is harder than most people actually do realize, and you've done that for multiple films in a bunch of different ways. One of the things I love about your story is hearing the mentorship of how you got to see into every department to fully understand that, because as a producer, you're the big picture person that has to be able to merge all those departments together to realize this bigger picture that's coming to the screen. So that was so wise, and what a great opportunity for you to be able to have set in on that. I love hearing that in your story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and Amber and I met yesterday at a thing called Producers Without Borders, and what I found was good ideas can come from anywhere, and you really got to listen to, I might take your book home tonight and read it, and we might be making a series next year. You never know. And so it's just sort of like being open to every idea and being open to every person. And of course, not everybody's going to love everything else, but at least give it the consideration. Say, this is why that's not for me. And go on to the next thing. And always just, I feel like always just remember that, because careers are long, and you got to just be good to people and hear what they have to say. And that's, I just feel like, good ideas come from everywhere. And, it's really just so interesting to, you just have to and bring people up, like on our set, our COVID, we'll talk about the movie that I was just on, but we had very strict COVID protocols on it because we have an 85-year-old actor. And so our COVID supervisor, who her job was basically administering PCR tests every morning, but she was a budding photographer. So we were like, we're going to get you to be our stills photographer some of the time too, and she'd never done it on a big movie before, but now her portfolio has big stars in it. Right. And, and you kind of go, great, this is great for her. It's great for us. Yeah, it's great. And the next thing, you just bring people up and see how you can. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of examples of that. But,
which I love that about you, because I wouldn't say that's everybody's approach, but it is what I believe as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe in that approach. Yes, it's definitely not everybody's approach. But last night at the Producers Beyond Borders, I love the speech that was given too, like just be kind, connect, encourage, foster community, network together in a positive way. That whole night was about that.
Exactly.
And that was one of the reasons that I was so passionate about going to it, and fostering some relationships from there, because like-mindedness goes a long ways.
Absolutely. It definitely does.
Yep.
It definitely does.
And it makes what we do easier when there's a like-mindedness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and maybe I should use that to lead into the film if we want to talk about the film, because so the film that I'm just completing is called Freud's Last Session, and it stars Anthony Hopkins as Sigmund Freud and Matthew Good as C.S. Lewis. But I'm producer of it, but there are 7 named producers, there are 37 executive producers, and there are 11 co-executive producers, and so that's a lot of people, but.
Yes.
We couldn't have made it without any single one of them. Do you know what I mean? And that's what's just it takes a village, and it is a collaborative process. And whether, it's that person who put in a bit of extra for the music, or that one who, every single, I mean, movies now are becoming more and more hard to get made. And so so I had somebody say, oh, what a joke, 37, I was like, how lucky am I? I've got all that backup, and or how lucky are all of us, so I think it is interesting to think, it's a collaborative, movies take a village.
They do.
Yeah, they really do
take a village to make the magic happen.
Yep.
Absolutely. And everybody having that like-heartedness, I feel like makes that process kind of more seamlessly move forward.
Yep.
And I'm super excited about this film.
Yeah, good.
We're going to get to see a screener of it, and super excited for that, excited for you. Why this movie, why this story, and why now?
Okay. Well, I think I think it's why now is a really good question, because I think we're actually living in a time where the world's really divided. There's red states, blue states. There's just all over. We're on the precipice of war. It feels like, again, all over.
Yes.
And this story is set in September 1939, on one day, the 3rd of September 1939, when the world is about to go to war, when Britain's about to enter World War II. And it's about sitting down with someone who has the complete opposite view that you do and hearing what they have to say. Mm-hmm. And so Sigmund Freud was the ultimate atheist, and C.S. Lewis was a devout Christian. And this story imagines that they sit down on this one day, and they never met, which is interesting. And but it does imagine this is 3 weeks before Sigmund Freud dies. He is dying of oral cancer. He's in a lot of pain. He's lost his daughter. He's lost his grandson, and he's just been kicked out of Vienna because he's Jewish. And so he's a refugee essentially in London, and and he's now seeing the world falling apart, and he's about to die. And C.S. Lewis at that point isn't as famous as he eventually becomes. So he's a younger man. He's a well-respected don at Oxford who's written a few books, but he's a famous Christian. And he actually went on during the war. Like, he wasn't very well known when our story takes place, but he went on during the war to become the way we all gathered around the television sets during the pandemic, everyone gathered around the radio to hear him talk about God during the war. And so everyone in Britain, they say his voice was almost as famous as the king's, because everyone was just listening to what he had to say. Wow. And so there's a huge, so what's interesting also about putting this movie together now is there's that similar divide now. Like, we had a lot of Christians who invested in this. We had a lot of psychoanalysts who invested in this, but there are people who are really interested in science, and they're really interested in religion, and they are really interested in hearing what the other person has to say, and so that's why I think it's the why now. It's a good question. And in terms of the project and how it got going and my involvement with it, so my very good friend Matthew Brown is the writer-director of it, and he co-wrote the screenplay with Mark St. Germain. But he had been working on it for years before I got involved. And he brought it to me during the pandemic and persuaded me to start producing again, which I'm happy we did, because it's been really great. But the background of the project is that there was a course taught at Harvard by a guy named Dr. Armand Nicoli Jr., and he taught it from 1967 till 2005. And it was basically a philosophy class about, initially it was about Freud, but then he wanted something to counterbalance Freud, so he made it Lewis. And he just was teaching the philosophies of these two men. And the playwright, Mark St. Germain, heard about this class and read, Armin Nicoli wrote a book called The Question of God. I think it's called God, Sex, Love, and the Meaning of Life. But The Question of God is the main title. Brilliant book. And Mark St. Germain read that book and he wrote a play called Freud's Last Session, and that was in 2009.
Okay.
And it's been running ever since. And, I saw it in London in 2021, I guess. But so it's been around.
Yeah.
And so a lot of actors knew about that play.
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, coming back to something else you just said, the play is on in Korea right now.
Oh.
And the guy from Squid Game is playing Freud. And they've just turned it into a musical, Freud's Last Session, the musical. But so weirdly, you can remake anything.
Yes.
But
But
in our movie, it's based on the play. But what we did was bring it out of the room, and so the play is just the two men sitting in a room debating.
Sure.
Our movie, when they talk about a lover, we meet the lover. When they talk about a childhood memory, we go see the childhood memory. So it's kind of cool in that sense. So it became much more cinematic by taking it out of the room. And but yeah, I just had
that's great.
Yeah.
And just how it all, where it came from, originated from the play, originated from those writers. I think it's great that you explained that process of how it goes from a play, because we were talking about on another episode with Laura about her books and how somebody that writes a book, how you can write as a writer versus how you can write as somebody that writes screenplays versus somebody who writes theater, dramas. So they're all different mediums and have to be executed in completely different ways.
Exactly.
Like you're saying, you get the liberty to go, hey, we can make up this childhood visionary thing. Like, we're going to see that. And how can we textize that and everything. So, okay, so how long from the start of this? Of course, he had been writing it for a while, it sounds like.
So he had been writing it, and so there were some producers in LA who were also producers on it still, who had developed it with him, and they had Christopher Plummer attached to play Freud a number of years ago, and I don't know if I should be talking about that. Anyway, but Christopher Plummer died at the beginning of the pandemic. And so they said, you know what, I think we have gone as far as we can go with this. And Matt never gave up, the writer-director, and he said, okay, well, I want to look at this. And he then persuaded me to get on board. But and so during the pandemic, he developed it more and really fleshed out the women characters. Freud's daughter is Anna Freud, who's actually quite famous in her own right. She founded psychoanalysis for children, and she was a lesbian, and she married the heiress. Lived for 40 years with the heiress to the Tiffany's fortune, a Manhattan socialite named Dorothy Burlingham. So that storyline was brought up a lot more in our film. Yeah. So that story was definitely expanded. And the original producers, Alan Greisman and Rick Nishida, they came back in, and Rick Nishida, who used to run CAA, and he's now retired from that. And he said, well, you know what, you guys have developed the screenplay more. Anthony Hopkins had passed long ago, but let's show it to him again. It's a different screenplay now. Yeah. And he had lunch with him, and literally 36 hours later, Anthony Hopkins was like, I'm in. And it was so exciting. It was just like, my God. But yeah, it was funny. Stop me if I made a deck for the film when we were getting it ready, and I sent to the designer, all the synopsis and all the characters and blah, blah. And the designers will always send you a concept first. And he sent me this one, and he's, tell me some cast ideas. And I did. Yeah. And it just had Anthony Hopkins all over it. And I was like, I sent it back and I said, well, we're never going to get Anthony Hopkins. So we please put Brian Cox and Jeremy Irons and put a few other faces, just so we of other great actors. Sure enough, literally the next week I was like, give me that Anthony Hopkins one back, because I'm going to use that one now. So it's like already made. But it's never even when you get. I mean, I feel so blessed to have Anthony Hopkins in our movie. He was a joy to work with, and he's brilliant in the film. But it's never easy. I mean, it is. It's a very intellectual drama, and it's. everybody will love it, of course, out there. But
Yes.
but it's an intellectual drama, and people want comedies, they want thrillers, they want action movies.
Yeah.
And this was one where they were like, well, I don't know, it's two guys in a room. And we're like, no, but it's got memories.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's still two guys in a room. So it's not an easy world for that. So even though you have Anthony Hopkins on, it's a process.
Gotta deliver.
It's a process.
Yeah.
So
Is this, y'all are taking it foreign, I'm assuming?
what?
You're going to release it domestic and foreign at the same time?
We are. So Sony Pictures Classics has picked it up in the U.S. And Sony has taken a number of foreign territories at the same time. And so they are, they haven't taken the world. We still have quite a few territories to sell. So touch wood.
Yes.
So Sony Classics is doing a limited release at Christmas, and then it's going to roll out in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, and having seen the trailer, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. It's done top quality, and there are some zinger comments and questions. And I believe there are a lot of us out there, because I am this person who loves to ask hard questions. And I feel like when you have the truth, you shouldn't be afraid of hard questions, because truth will stand.
Yeah.
And so it only builds your faith, or you end up getting a new way to think that is true, and you abandon fables that you believed or deceptive ideas. So I just thought, based on the trailer, it was incredible.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you so much. No, it does look beautiful. We have a great team behind us. I mean, our cinematographer, Ben Smithard, shot Downton Abbey and The Father. Our production designer, Gianna Rigi, has been doing it for decades and has won Academy Awards. She did Howard's End, and she's actually worked with Hopkins, I think, 4 times. The music is actually amazing in the film. You'll see it tonight. But Kobe Brown, who's actually the director's brother, he did music. So we have a lot. It was a family affair, but it was also, a really talented group of people getting together, which was great.
Yes. And I have to say, it's so exciting seeing the trailer. Really is made me so excited for tonight because it is beautiful, so smart. I think it has an edge to it. Although it is 2 people in a room, like what you're saying, and it's really not from the trailer. I mean, there's just there's so much movement in it between their 2 stories, and you're following both storylines, and it's so smart and well done that but I like that. I like that stretching kind of thinking. Exactly. And the same with the hard questions. I like to sit. I think if you don't ask the hard questions, or you're not willing to sit in the room with the opposition of what you believe, how do you test what you really believe?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's this whole concept. It's like both men are testing, what their beliefs are.
Right.
Which in my opinion solidifies or breaks down.
Right.
Which you're looking for that in life.
Yeah,
I mean, you need one or the way. So I'm super excited. Thank you for coming over. I know you
Thanks for having me.
You have
it's so
your
great to be
big
here.
screening and everything tonight, and I know that Houston's just delighted to have you here,
Thank you for
sharing it with us and letting us be a part of that with you.
It's been great to be here. It's so nice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So thanks for sharing with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we will, if people want to follow you and people want to look up and follow the movie and other things that you do and all the things we've talked about, how would they do that? How would our audience do that?
Well, to follow the movie, look at Sony Pictures Classics website or hashtag Freud's Last Session or Freud's Last Session movie. If you want to follow me, I guess Meg Thomson 11 is my handle on Twitter and on everything on Instagram and everything else.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not that exciting to follow, but anyway.
In your estimation, but hearing you talk, man, you have a lot of wisdom to share.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys.
And you never know where that next great idea will come from.
Exactly.
So you just don't know. I encourage, within reason, people to reach out to people and connect. And, you're really, when I first met you, you were just so kind to come up and say hello and so open and willing to be friendly and talk to people. And I think that's not always the case in this industry, especially when you've accomplished the things that you've accomplished in this industry. And so I encourage people to follow you and watch the things that you do and support the things that you do and who you are. So
I'm so glad we had time to do this.
Me too.
Great to meet you both.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. Well, Laura, thanks for sitting with us today.
I love it. I feel honored.
Yes. It's been a delight to sit with both of you today. Thank you for sharing your story. Can't wait to see the film. Go follow, go hashtag the film and everything else. But until then, we'll see you on Set Life.